Welcome to the Language Fuel podcast. Our mission is to fuel the teaching and learning of languages worldwide. I'm your host, Joanna Smith. Hi there. Thank you once again for joining us on the Language Fuel podcast. It's great to have you with us. This is episode number 33. Today I'm talking with Pete Jones. Now, Pete is based here in Auckland, but as you can possibly guess from his accent, he's not necessarily a local from here. Pete is somewhat of an expert in preparing students for the International English Language Testing Service exam, which is also better known by its acronym IELTS. So when we talk about IELTS all through the interview, that's what we're talking about. And IELTS is used extensively throughout the world as a standard measure for student proficiency in the English language. Pete is the author of a free IELTS course online, and there will be links in the show notes to where you can look at that. And he also has a YouTube channel where he gives feedback on specific students' IELTS speaking activities. And this is an amazing resource for both English language learners and teachers, and we talk a little bit about that in the interview. The work also gained him a nomination in the IELTS Awards, which is an international award recognizing fantastic practice in the English language teaching industry. So I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. Even if you're not a teacher of English, there may be some gems for you to enjoy. So without any further delay, here's the interview with Pete.
All right, well, thank you, Pete, for meeting with me today. This is Pete Jones, and I will let him introduce himself. So, Pete, tell me a little bit about what you do. All I know is that you have a YouTube channel and you have a website with a free IELTS course. So, can you just tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I run a free IELTS course online that focuses on helping students prepare for the IELTS test. Mm-hmm. And they simply have to register and then they can access the course for free. I also run an IELTS blog where I post advice and tips about preparing for the IELTS test. And then perhaps the thing that I'm most known for is my YouTube channel. Yep. And I produce IELTS speaking videos where the videos show a candidate, a recent IELTS candidate, answering some IELTS speaking questions, and then me providing some feedback on that candidate speaking after.
Right.
That would be useful for certainly that candidate, but also many other candidates who are preparing for the test.
Wow. Just a quick question about that. How do you get students to be, because this is a public YouTube channel, right?
It is, yeah.
And the worldwide people subscribing. Yeah. So how do you get a student willing to be videoed? Because I imagine if I was a learner, obviously you're going to be making mistakes because you're not perfect. Is there any element of embarrassment or what's in it for them, I guess,
I think it was actually easier than I thought. It's generally quite easy to find people that are willing to participate because it's a win-win situation. The candidate gets some speaking practice.
Yes.
And some useful feedback from me.
Yeah.
Other IELTS students around the world get to see a real sample of a candidate speaking in a very natural way for them. I mean, it's unpracticed, it's unrehearsed, it's unscripted.
Yeah.
And they get some some feedback that might help them in their own IELTS journey. They might be able to relate to the candidate because of shared nationality, shared English language level, shared reason for taking IELTS. So that authenticity of the video is something people can relate to and engage with.
Yeah. And
then they get some useful feedback as well.
Right.
Which helps them hopefully improve their IELTS speaking band score.
Yep.
It's a win for me in the sense that I enjoy doing it. I get recognition for doing it. Mm-hmm. It's one of those win-win situations, and that's the way I present it to candidates.
Sure.
So
they're usually quite happy to participate.
Yeah. And I also promise to respect their participation by making sure I don't allow any comments that are not constructive.
Right.
So, I allow comments that are positive, and I allow comments that are critical in some way or another, as long as they are written in a respectful and constructive way.
Right.
So that's a promise I make to the candidates as well.
So when you post on YouTube, so I'm assuming you yourself are managing the channel. So do you sometimes get those negative comments that you just don't publish, sort of thing?
Yeah, there are. As with
anything these
any
days,
online platform where people can comment.
Right.
They're not that frequent.
Right.
But they do come in. The vast majority of comments are either just saying thank you, I found the videos useful, and then some of the comments have questions about the candidate's performance or about how IELTS speaking is assessed.
Yeah. So would you answer those questions?
Yeah.
Awesome. And one of my questions in terms of the tasks that the candidate is doing, is it the actual exam task, or is it sort of a separate thing where you're kind of practicing with them?
So they are IELTS speaking questions taken from published versions of the official test.
Okay, so like previous questions or something like that. Yeah.
And each video just focuses on one part of the test.
Yeah.
And also my feedback focuses on one aspect of the speaking criteria.
Okay, so you don't sort of do the whole
spectrum. And that's one of the the underlying principles, I guess, behind the whole series is that I believe that for students to understand how they are going to be, well, first of all, I believe that it's important for students to understand how they're going to be assessed.
Right.
How their speaking is going to be assessed.
Yeah.
And that can help them improve their speaking and get a better band score.
Right.
Secondly, I think that students cannot understand this in one go. And that if you build up their understanding over time by focusing on different aspects of the speaking criteria, then they're going to build up an understanding of overall how they're assessed.
Right. So would a candidate say, I want to prepare for the IELTS speaking exam, if I were to go onto your channel and watch several examples, then I would over that period get lots of different types of feedback? Is that what you're saying? Because everyone has a slight different angle that you might have given feedback on?
Exactly, and sometimes a candidate may only need to watch one video because the particular piece of feedback that I've given is actually a kind of game changer for them. It's touching on the exact aspect of their own speaking that they need to improve.
Pain point or something. Yeah.
But others might watch the whole series.
Yeah. And how many do you have up there at the moment? I haven't been there recently.
Yeah, so at the moment I've got 10.
Okay.
I've got another 3 recorded, which will be coming out over the next few months.
Okay.
And the long-term goal is to think of this as a library where you've got videos of candidates from different nationalities.
Yes.
With different levels of English proficiency.
Yep.
So different IELTS speaking band scores. And so, a student can search for Chinese students, for example, or they could search for IELTS speaking band score 6.
Right.
And so they could watch the videos that are most relevant to them.
Yeah.
And they're gonna help them improve their own speaking.
Yeah. So is your aim to get broad range of first languages and different levels and that sort of thing? So if you've got sort of a matrix, you're trying to tick off the different squares or something?
Yeah, but not quite that organised.
Not quite that organised.
And I don't have a target number of videos either. But certainly when I'm thinking about doing a new round of recordings, I'm thinking, okay, so which nationalities haven't I got? Which band scores haven't I focused on?
Yeah.
And that might influence who I ask.
Yeah. So where do you get the people from?
So I have a sponsor, and so New Zealand Language Centres in Auckland. Okay. And they are happy for me to invite students from their campus to participate in the project.
Okay. And so that leads nicely to the other thing that you're doing, which is this free IELTS preparation course, which is also sponsored by NZLC, if I understand that correctly. So is that how it's able to be free, because of the sponsorship? Like, I'm quite curious.
Yeah, and also, it's something I enjoy doing and I'm happy to spend time doing.
So what's in that course? What sorts of activities?
So at the moment, the main focus is on writing. So there's lessons to help students understand how their writing is assessed, sample answers for IELTS writing, and then exercises to highlight different aspects of IELTS writing, like how it's organised, what vocabulary is used, what different grammar is used. But the longer term plan is to focus also on the other skills in the IELTS test, so reading, listening, and speaking as well.
So is that are you developing them sort of in the background amongst other things you're doing?
Yeah, it's one of the projects on my list.
Yep. Nice. And what sorts of content is in your blog then? The third one you mentioned.
So a lot of the blog posts include the IELTS speaking videos, but then extend the advice that I'm giving in the video.
Right.
But then I also have other blog posts focusing on giving advice for IELTS listening, IELTS reading, IELTS writing. There are some posts on how to manage your time, for example, in different aspects, in the different components of the IELTS test.
Yeah, which is super useful. I mean, it's kind of sort of simplistic and may not be rocket science, but if you're sitting an exam, you want to be as well prepared as you can be, right? So it's
well, I think the number, or so the two most common reasons why students fail any type of exam is time management or poor time management, and also not answering the question properly. And I think that's also true of IELTS. Taking away English language proficiency,
sure.
If you think about problems that a proficient speaker of English would have,
Those
two reasons why they might not get a score that represents their proficiency level is poor time management and not answering the question properly.
Yeah, not interpreting the question properly too. So the big question that I'd like to ask you is, how did you get involved in this? I mean, it's quite IELTS heavy. Are you passionate about IELTS, or what was your journey to get into doing these things?
I've been an English language teacher for many years, and I guess if you're an English language teacher nowadays, at some point or other, you're going to be introduced to IELTS because of the number of students that need to take it around the world. Certainly in New Zealand. So I guess my journey into IELTS was the same as many teachers, and there will be many teachers listening to this who will have a similar journey, I think, where they've been teaching general English for a while, and at some point they're asked to teach an IELTS class. Maybe given support, maybe not, and so that's how I ended up teaching IELTS. It was realizing, first of all, wondering what it was. When students in my English class said, I need to take IELTS.
What is that?
And then, finding out more, and then teaching an IELTS class, and then, getting more involved over the years.
And I mean, there is, as you say, huge demand here in New Zealand. Would you say it's the biggest exam that's used for university entrance? Because there are a couple of others. There's TOEFL and probably country-specific exams, but I don't even know if the universities accept those other exams.
Well, IELTS is the most popular English proficiency test used for a multitude of reasons, actually, but university entrance or further study being one of them. They most popular in terms of the number of tests taken worldwide per year.
Right.
But there are others as well that are accepted, and a common question actually that I get is, is it easy? Would it be easier for me to take IELTS, or would it be easier for me to take TOEFL, for example, or another English language exam?
And what's the answer to that? Is there any difference much?
I guess my answer is that students need to have a look at the different components of the exam, and one of the biggest differences might be with TOEFL being an American English exam. So, if you're not familiar with American English, then you might find that more challenging.
Right.
Whereas, IELTS uses accents from different English-speaking countries.
Yeah, they have a range, don't they? So it's, definitely more international, which hence the title, international. Yeah. Tell us about some of the more interesting content of your videos or your blogs and that sort of thing. Like, are there any funny moments? Have you had bloopers when you're trying to record things, or, some interesting content there?
I think all of the videos are interesting because we're using real people here. We're expressing their own views or talking about their own experiences, likes or dislikes. And so that makes it inherently interesting. And the way that I decide what to focus on the feedback is actually a collaborative process in the sense that after we've recorded the video with a candidate, I ask them about their speaking and what they find difficult or how they think they need to improve. And that influences the kind of feedback I give.
Right.
It might not always determine it categorically because it might be that there's an obvious feature of their speaking that I can feed back on that's going to help a lot of people.
Right.
That they're not aware of.
Yeah.
And would be useful for them to know about.
Yeah.
So, but it's often a collaborative process. In terms of other interesting content, a recent collaboration I did is something I'd like to share actually. And what's interesting about this, I think, is that this year I didn't set a New Year's resolution this year. I decided to have a word for the year. And I got that idea through reading a blog post of someone suggesting a different way of setting New Year's resolutions.
Yeah. Lovely.
And so my word of the year this year is collaboration. And I've recently collaborated with Jason R. Levine, who is otherwise known as MC Fluency, and he does raps to help people learn English.
I think I've seen a couple of them online.
He's also really popular on YouTube.
Yes. Yeah.
And we met at the Elton's awards ceremony this year in London, as we were both finalists.
Yeah.
And
congratulations on being a finalist, by the way.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
It was a great event, great to be part of. And we got chatting after the ceremony just over a drink, and we came up with this idea of doing an IELTS rap. And then we made contact after the event because he lives, he doesn't live here. So
where is he?
He's based in France.
Okay.
So we made contact and we talked about what the focus could be. And we've collaborated on this IELTS rap to help students remember useful phrases for IELTS speaking.
Okay.
The IELTS speaking test. So
cool.
The useful phrases are all phrases to help students say something when they don't know what to say.
Right. So
whether it's
filling in, give them time to think about things.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Whether it might be that they just need time to think about what they want to say before they say it, or maybe they didn't understand the question.
Right.
So phrases like, can you repeat that, please?
Yes.
So we scripted it, and he performed it and recorded it, and we've recently published it.
Oh,
and it's on my blog as well. And
so is it on your YouTube channel and your blog?
It's on his YouTube channel, and I've embedded it on a blog post.
Okay.
And I've included an extra infographic with some more phrases as well.
And we'll link to that in the show notes for here as well.
So that was a really interesting collaboration, and we've got really good feedback on it, both from students, but also language teachers, but also other people that aren't learning a language, and they've actually said things like the phrases will be useful when I have an interview.
Right, of course.
Next week.
It's the same sort of feeling too when you're nervous and you're kind of, what do I say? Or did I understand the question right? It's it's exactly the same, isn't it?
So it's actually it's gone beyond IELTS to English language teaching in general, but actually it's gone beyond that as well. To anybody taking an interview.
Yeah. Oh, well done. That is very interesting. So that kind of leads into another question that I had for you, which is, the IELTS training course that you've got there for free, and your YouTube channel giving really awesome feedback to candidates. I can very clearly see a lot of value for students. What do you think the value is for other teachers? So a lot of people listening to this podcast are teachers. What can they gain from looking at some of those videos and that sort of thing?
I think they can gain a better understanding of how students are assessed in speaking.
Right.
And how they can help students understand that.
Yep.
The IELTS assessment criteria are complex and not written with a lot of terminology, which students certainly don't understand, but even teachers may not understand exactly what is meant by some of these terms. And so I think it's really good professional development for teachers, learning about the assessment criteria. And I also know a lot of teachers who either, recommend them to their IELTS students, so they're giving their students access to another resource.
Yes.
Or who even use them in class. I've spoken to a few teachers recently who have created lesson plans around the video where
fantastic.
They will hide the band score.
Yeah.
Set a comprehension question first, so that the students are first challenged to understand what the candidate is talking about.
So the content.
Yeah. And then, asking them again perhaps what band score they think they got, or good things they notice about their speaking. Did they notice any problems? Getting students to assess candidates themselves. Or they might even give them more focused questions like, was the candidate able to keep talking without hesitating?
Right.
And then they get the students to assess the candidates speaking themselves.
Yes.
and share their ideas together before playing the feedback part of the video where I give feedback.
Right. So they can compare their own thinking with the professionals' advice, sort of thing.
And then this is a great way to equip students with the ability to self-assess or assess their peers.
And even just the listening exercise, we talked earlier about, whether it's US English, say, and TOEFL, or a range of accents, learners these days have to listen to other learners as well, just in their day-to-day, work life and everything. Not everyone's speaking with native speakers, or has to. So learning to listen to imperfect English is a skill, right? An important skill too.
It is, and it's something they are probably, for the majority of non-English speakers, particularly non-native English speakers, if they're living in their own country, they're more likely to be speaking to other non-native English speakers than native English speakers. So whether it's through people they're meeting in their countries or doing business with in other countries.
That makes absolute sense. So I can see a lot of use, and I love that, using a real life, genuine video for a whole lesson. You can certainly spend a whole lesson on that sort of thing. So that's fantastic.
And that's something I'd actually like to see become more of a feature in published materials, where now a lot, most published materials are written for learners. But I would like to see a move towards materials written about learners and by learners.
Yes.
Or at least they are part of the materials writing process. Whereas now, that they might test some material before it's published, but they're certainly not part of the process of creating those materials. And my IELTS videos are an example of how learners can become part of the materials writing process. And that's certainly something I'd like to see more of and do more of myself. Yeah,
fantastic. Where are you going with your channel then? Looking to the future, what are your plans? We talked a little bit, I guess you've got more.
The other thing is, my word of the year is still collaboration, and we've got, a few months left yet.
Yes.
So I'm always open to exploring other ideas for collaboration, and that's
fabulous.
I didn't know at the beginning of this year that I was going to be part of the world's first IELTS rap, and here it is. It's out.
Great.
Published.
Yeah. What's your word of the year going to be next year?
I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see in January.
Yes, fantastic. Now, just before we go, because we're heading on the end of our time, it's getting on there. What a lot of our listeners are early career teachers, or maybe they're traveling and teaching and may not necessarily have had a bunch of formal training, although they're doing their best and learning as they go. What are some key pieces of advice that you might give to somebody in that situation?
I started out like that too. So my first job teaching English was in Hong Kong in 1997 as an unqualified teacher. My only relevant qualification was being a native speaker, if you can call that a qualification. My employers did so. And I started out with no understanding of the methodology of teaching English, and very few resources, in fact, as well. And now obviously that's different. I'm qualified,
yes.
and understand,
and very experienced as well,
and understand the process of language learning,
yes.
and how we can aid that as teachers. But I think something that sped that process up for me was just being a reflective teacher. Reflecting on what goes well, what doesn't go well in the classroom, thinking about how you can do things differently. And I certainly now, I'm in an educational leadership role, and so responsible for other teachers' professional development. And the teachers who develop the fastest, I think, are those that are most reflective.
Would you say also that going along with the practice of reflection is an attitude of kind of being open and accepting feedback as well?
Certainly, yeah. I think that's really important. It doesn't always have to be accepting feedback. I think it always has to be listening to feedback, sure. And then evaluating it.
Yeah.
But yeah, listening. I think listening to what other people are saying, who may or may not be more experienced. Experience doesn't always equal good advice. So although I started out without formal training, when I realised that I enjoyed this profession, enjoyed being around students learning English and the diverse range of backgrounds that those people come from.
Yeah.
I looked into what I needed to do to become qualified and get better at my job.
Yeah.
So I would say that if you're doing the job and not qualified and enjoying the job, then your next course of action should be looking at getting a formal qualification.
Fabulous. I would agree with much of what you said there. Awesome. Well, we are at the end of our time. How can people find you on the web? What are the URLs or search terms that they could use to find some of your material we talked about today?
So my free IELTS course is just simply freeieltscourse.com.
Well, that's easy, isn't it?
Yeah. And my blog is on that website as well. And most of my YouTube videos are linked to on the blog. If you want to find my videos on YouTube, the easiest way to do it is just go onto YouTube and search IELTS Pete Jones.
Pete Jones, awesome.
And one of my videos will come up. Or if you search IELTS Speaking Band Score 6 or IELTS Speaking Band Score 5.
Great.
They'll come up generally on the first page. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It was really interesting talking to you, and we wish you all the best with your ongoing projects.
Thank you.
You're
welcome. Thank you for listening to the Language Fuel podcast. You can navigate to the show notes and links via our homepage at www.languagefuel.com. See you next time.